Hello anyone who's watching this, I hope you've made the most out of the conditions over the last week or so, because it's all changing through the next couple of days, going a lot warmer and with some drizzle rain to all elevations as well. You can see here on the station at the CIC hut, the temperatures are now spiking quite significantly to above freezing, and it's only going to continue to get higher over the next couple of days. It's not soaring to plus 10 degrees on the Ben and ruining winter completely, but it is definitely thawing, and fairly significant thaw as well. So through tonight and into tomorrow, the freezing level here is currently at 600 meters, and it's going to rise quite quickly throughout Thursday, going to about 2,000, 2,500 meters. During the night times, though, it will kind of hover just above the highest summits before rising significantly in the daytime as well. So my prediction with how this is going to affect the current snowpack basically depends on how much precipitation comes with it, because the majority of that will be falling as rain. Now, the snowpack is really well consolidated, and if it's just a high freezing level without much in the way of precipitation, it should be able to hang on quite well. But depending on how many fronts come through on this southwesterly airflow, with these higher freezing levels will dictate what is remaining when it goes colder again, and it is going colder again is the good. So the winds are now veering from these southeasterlies to a southwesterly with a lot of precipitation coming through today, and you can see they're coming straight up from the south, really, really warm air with some fronts pushing through as well. And these fronts initially start to fall as snow to higher elevation as the cold air is clinging on, but as the fronts continue to push through, warmer and warmer air gets behind it, and it's just a couple days of warm and wet. And how wet kind of depends on how these low pressure systems develop, where they move, how far off the coast to go, and how much moisture they can track up with them slightly milder core. And it is after this last low pressure system, the start to the mid part of next week, where the uncertainty comes up. But colder air basically should be returning, hopefully. Now, it is worth noting this GFS model here is extremely optimistic, really, really cold in comparison to all the other ones. So if I put on the 2-meter temperatures, it's really optimistic, saying that we're at freezing at sea level for the last half of the month. This is the operational run here for the GFS. It's significantly colder than the majority of the other runs, so it is worth taking this with a pinch of salt that it's got us below freezing at sea level for the end of the month, but this is significantly lower than the trend. But the general trend is for temperatures to be cooling. So of the UKV, you can see a bit more clearly with the change in wind direction, the warmer air mass coming in. You can see it starting to creep in here at the front, and the veering of the winds here as well. And that's bringing all the precipitation and the much warmer winds with it, shifting away this southeasterly to a more southwesterly flow with much warmer temperatures. So this is the temperature at sea level. So I've got the ECMWF model because it's a little bit more realistic compared to the latest run of the GFS. So I'll go into a bit more detail about this one, about what's happening. So we've got the warmer airs coming through, and it's about a week that it's lasting, this trend. And I'm hoping that some of the snowpack will stay on, especially in the gullies. It's the back end of this low pressure system here currently that's got lots of cold air behind it over Greenland that's hopefully going to then come onto us with the westerlies. And it is looking like we're going to have a positive NAO sourced by a particularly colder air mass to the north of us. So that basically means lots in the way of precipitation and quite cold temperatures, where you can see these like slightly darker purple and blues into the first week of March. So very Scottish conditions, and potentially veering into some northerlies as the low pressures move through. So the minutiae of these low pressures are not to be picked at, but the general trend is the low pressures have colder cores as there's colder air sitting to the north of us, but they're being sourced from a positive NAO. As you can see, the general trend is that they're kind of kicking up about the 26th and it's continuing into the first week of March. So it's kind of a good change from this thawing blocking system that we've got over the next week or so. And here the metagram's kind of showing the temperatures as well, cooling down around the 25th, 26th. So the slight thaw that we've got for the next week or so, and 25th, 26th temperatures cooling again. The short answer to what's happening, hold your horses for about a week or so. There is colder air on the way, not significantly colder, but pretty good for snowfall and general wintry conditions. But it's about when this is coming through, and it won't be until next week, mid next week, and it will be particularly arduous conditions as well when it does come through with heavy snow, quite strong winds, poor visibility, potentially wet, with freezing levels being the most important factor of choosing routes. It could be that the Douglas boulder is in really good condition, or you might have to go really high up in the Ben. as the turf will be majority unfrozen as well from these higher freezing levels. On the slightly longer term, it's quite interesting to see that the stratospheric polar vortex has gone under some significant warming recently, and it's caused the easterly air mass to take a bit better control over the last week or so, and that's why we've had these really gloomy and slightly colder than average days without much in the way of precipitation. Now it's doing something really strange over the next week or so, with the winds strengthening slightly as the temperatures do cool over the next week in the stratosphere, but then the warming effect is forecast to significantly increase, taking control again, and that basically opens the door for more in the way of conditions that we've had recently after the positive NAO regime that we've got for the first week of March, the end of February. So basically what that means is we've got a pretty good setup for the first half of March, really, with some likelihood of high amounts of precipitation coming through for the end of this week-long thaw, and then the allowance of some colder air moving in from the north or potentially northeast, as there is less of the opportunity of westerlies to occur with these winds higher in the atmosphere, dictating less of the weather regimes that we should be getting into the month of March. It is good news in the fact that yes, we have got a thaw, and yes, it is going to be a fairly significant thaw, but there is good news around the corner. You're just going to have to hold tight for a week or so. So hopefully you've been out in these good conditions, and keep an eye out for what happens after this. And like I say, it'll be about the 25th, 26th, 27th of February before we start getting anything significant in the way of winter conditions returning. But thank you very much for listening.